This is Nicole Anderson, and I will be discussing the benchmark assignment of organizational design, structure, and change. Cluedo is a cloud-based search engine optimization company. They use artificial intelligence to improve search results based on user behavior, trends, and historical data. They are a SaaS company, meaning software as a service, meaning that the organization utilizing the software doesn't simply just buy the software, they buy the service that comes along with it. Cluedo's technology is implemented and helped maintain with the hope of creating lifelong relationships with their customers. Founded in 2015, Cluedo has formal offices in both Denmark and America, while they have employees working remotely over 4 different countries. Every year, Fortune magazine publishes a most admired list of top companies. Here are the 8 dimensions in which they are evaluated. 9 if they are a global company, and they are rated on effectiveness in doing business globally. Because Cluedo has offices in Europe and America, I'm going to focus on the 9th dimension in which they can improve doing business globally. There are 3 areas of improvement in their global business strategy: cultural differences in business practices, dealing with cultural differences among internal employees, and management structure. Cultural differences we have found that the way American companies buy and how European companies buy are very different. Yet Cluedo is leveraging the same sales approach for both. For example, in America, when many businesses are buying SaaS technology, they're evaluating at least 3 competitors. Rarely are organizations forthcoming with that evaluation process, leading sales personnel to believe that they're the only business being evaluated. In the US, it's very common to be direct about competition and eliminate them right from the start by pointing out their weaknesses. In Denmark, Danes are much more trusting, and they found this approach to be offensive, off-putting, or too pushy. The way we sell is different globally, and our workforce needs to reflect different strategies. The same theories applies to annual renewal of subscriptions. Americans will often evaluate SaaS technology every 3 to 5 years, and we use that to our advantage when prospecting into competitor accounts. But Danes are much more loyal once they enter into a contractual or formal partnership. There are plenty of structural differences between Danes and Americans. I'm going to focus on 3: work-life balance, work ethic, and communication. Americans seem that they live to work, while Danes work to live. They value their free time and often get more of it than their American counterparts. However, this could be perceived as what Americans would feel as like a lack of work ethic. If a deadline is approaching or a customer needs help, it can always be handled tomorrow, and the Danes might log off for the day. That is normal in their culture. But their coworkers across the pond, it may look like poor work ethic when that's not the case. Danish workers are still invested in quality work. Secondly, Danes are extremely blunt and straightforward, which might be perceived as rude, especially to US residents in the Midwest, where they are typically more passive aggressive. In 1993, Denmark implemented mandatory empathy classes in grade school. Most communication is virtual or over email, so the direct communication could seem even more harsh and personal, as body language accounts for 70% of communication, which is now lost. There are 4 strategies for dealing with challenges in multicultural teams: adoption, structural intervention, managerial intervention, and exit. We will be focusing on structural intervention. The CEO, CIO, CFO all sit in the Danish office, while the American top leadership is a chief growth officer. This lack of leadership on the American side can make them feel isolated from decisions or company culture. In a more specific example, the customer success manager sits in the Danish office while the majority of the customer success team resides in the US office, creating a huge gap in mentorship and training due to limited overlapping business hours. Additionally, Danes have different perceptions of power distance than most Americans and care less about titles or competing for job titles or placements. This can be hard for managers to foster growth with employees when their views of authority are vastly different. Potential consequences. There are several potential consequences if these issues are not addressed: loss of business, high rates of turnover, and low employee engagement. Cultural differences in business. If cultural differences are not addressed in the way we sell and interact with our different clients, we could lose the US side of the business, accounting for 50% of the company's sales. We have learned that American companies and Danish companies conduct business differently, and there should be a strategic approach in both offices when it comes to prospecting, selling, retaining relationships with these clients, or it could cost Cluedo half their business. Regarding cultural differences, Americans and Danes work differently. That doesn't mean that one is harder working than the other. However, if one group is consistently in competition or feeling like the other teams are social loafing, that could result in dysfunctional conflict. Dysfunctional conflict is conflict in which there is no productive means. It focuses on emotions and differences of parties. Dysfunctional conflict can lead to many consequences, including high turnover, which can get expensive. According to Forbes and Employee Benefits News, the average turnover of a single employee is an additional $15,000. Furthermore, research from Willis Tower Watson survey tells us that about 1 in 3 employees will leave a company within 2 years. This cost will add up quickly, as we could be losing anywhere from $15,000 to $450,000 a year based on a company between 3 to 100 employees. This number is even more so if the employee is a direct contributor from the sales team. Due to structural conflict, both horizontally, meaning between coworkers, and vertically between leadership and employees, this conflict can lead to conflict escalation, in which there are 9 stages, according to Friedrich Gassel: hardening, debate, action over words, image and coalitions, loss of face, threat as a strategy, limited attempts to overthrow, fragmentation of the enemy, and together into the abyss. Some consequences of these stages are covert attacks, strategic threats, ultimatums, abandonment, or total war. There are 2 organizational design elements: centralized and decentralized. Centralized organizations have centralized power and decision-making ability at higher levels. There are clear lines of communication and a chain of command. Decisions tend to be straightforward, following an SOP. Decentralized implementation exhibits lower levels of autonomy for making decisions. It's not just up to upper management. They have a flatter structure and have less middle managers. They emphasize faster decision-making without going through the red lines. Pluto falls into a more of a decentralized design. There are also 5 types of organizational structure: divisional structure, matrix structure, pre-bureaucratic structure, bureaucratic structure, structures that arise from different groupings. Divisional structures often belong to larger organizations with several products, services, geographical coverage, or overlapping markets. Matrix structures have 2 managers to report to, like a project manager and then also a functional manager. Pre-bureaucratic structures usually belong to smaller organizations where there is more one-on-one communication and less standardization. Bureaucratic structures exhibit a formal division of labor, chain of command or hierarchy, clear standard operating procedures. And lastly, that arise from different groupings. Team-based, where teams either horizontal or vertical define the organization. Lattice, where teams are formed and then dissolved based on the current needs or network of that organization. Or network organization may contract out specific divisions or tasks, and all of these teams come together to form the larger organization. Organizational culture is defined as a system of shared values, norms, and assumptions that guide members' attitudes and behaviors. Pluto's culture and values are listed as growth, sincerity, reason, and passion. These values are known as espoused values. How employees actually act are enacted values. In a healthy organization, they will be aligned. Regarding conscious culture, there are 4 pillars to conscious capitalism, and just by addressing these three improvements, we could be embodying 3 out of the 4: stakeholder orientation, conscious leadership, and conscious culture. The embodiment of stakeholder orientation is not just for investors, it's for everyone involved in the company's ecosystem, even our customers. By selling and working with organizations specific to how they do business is being mindful of stakeholder involvement and shows embodiment of the first pillar. Embodiment of conscious leadership: great organizations are guided by great leaders. Servant leaders put the needs of others before themselves. This also means understanding their culture and how they work and what values they have, maybe how they differ from our own. Lastly, embodiment of conscious culture. As we defined earlier, the values of Pluto are growth, reason, sincerity, and passion. These are the ethos and foundation of the business. Having servant leaders that foster that culture of using these values in everything they do adds to a conscious culture. Using these values and structural intervention to improve employee engagement will help foster a healthy organizational culture and be adding to the overall culture of conscious capitalism. Suggestions for improvement. Kotter's 8 steps to speak to how to effectively manage change. Create a sense of urgency by explaining why this change needs to happen. Build a guiding coalition that are able to help guide, and communicate these changes. From a strategic vision and initiatives where you share your vision of what exactly needs to happen in order to achieve the envisioned future. Enlist a volunteer army, you must have buy-in from all levels of the organization in order to implement a large change successfully. Enable action by removing barriers like any ineffective or inefficient processes that can cause noise or distraction. Generate short-term wins by tracking and celebrating small wins that will keep you motivated during the lengthy change. Sustain acceleration, don't slow down after that first win, keep pushing harder and harder to gain success. And lastly, institute change, ensure the new behaviors are in line with future expectations in order to fully adopt. These three changes do not need to happen all at once. Rather, by using a multi-stage process like in Lewin's process model, unfreezing is a process in which people need to understand a change needs to happen. Once acknowledged, the change can happen gradually, and refreezing makes the new behaviors and process permanent. A small change like implementing new visual communication like Teams and having a cultural norm of always having your camera on, may be a small change and can be implemented quickly. And this can help employees get to know each other better and see those visual cues and bring in body language back to the conversation. However, larger change like implementing a new international strategy or implementing structural alignment are much larger changes and need time to be implemented and should be following the Kotter's 8-step model. Some expected challenges. There are several anticipated challenges. Resource allocation when it comes to training, teams on the new international strategies, employees not willing to buy into the change based on fear or the unknown and security. With a new international business strategy, it is vital each location is retrained based on their target market and the culture in which they buy and sell. For employees working in other offices, like Americans working in Denmark, their training may be far more extensive to break current sales cycles or habits. Many employees may protest this change if they believe they don't have the resources or there doesn't seem to be a strong enough business case to dedicate their time to this change. Employees on both ends may have a fear of the unknown, especially if teams will be realigned and employees are reporting to new management. Any disruption to patterns may prevent them from buying into this change with the fear of the unknown. They might also fear for their job security if they can't adapt the new sales model or fear of losing their job. All of these are possible challenges we can face when implementing this change. But we have learned some lessons, and we know that by securing top management support, starting small, and fostering open communication, we will be able to implement this change more successfully. In order for this change to happen, top management is essential, and they will be the first ones dealing with control and power problems. According to Peter Senge, starting small and a change will lead to a better change of success. An example of this would be having just a few sales reps or a small team in each office change their international go-to-market strategy before rolling out to the entire company. If this change has proven to be successful, like a focus group, it can then be implemented on a larger scale. And lastly, foster open communication during this entire process. If a change is occurring, employees are likely to have questions. If you fail to give them a platform where these questions can be asked, they might be filled with rumors or false information. Here are the references that were used in the making of this PowerPoint.